How are you doing?
Very well.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Sharp as a tack. For us to then be able to have this conversation, thank you for joining us this morning. Dennis takes us to Chad this week.
Yes, a country that is rich in oil, and oil became a major export in 2000. The country is actually named after Lake Chad. But one thing that stands out today, not in a positive light, is the fact that precipitation is happening rapidly and the lake is losing its water. So one would ask then, what is the country doing to preserve that water source that it is named after? Because then the future generation would want to enjoy what it's named after. But let's go to the proverb. Even the tallest baobab tree started as a small nut. Even the tallest baobab tree started as a small nut. How would you interpret it?
All great things start small. Mm-hmm. That is the essence of that proverb.
Yes.
That we must never ever be worried that our steps are small. It all starts with what we may describe as baby steps. Mm-hmm. Achebe put it very well, that when you see the mouth of a king or a queen, you wonder whether it once suckled the mother's breasts. And I think that is as dramatic and as poetic as it can be.
As it can be. Absolutely. We all start from somewhere. And it's great because the greatest things actually all had that same beginning. There's so many things that are happening, and that I'm going to use Friday as a pivot point, because whereas a lot of attention was on Nairobi and the unfortunate 30 deaths that occurred as a result of the flooding, maybe painted a picture of, some of the other things that are going in the country. But if we use that as a pivot point to then say, okay, where are we? And if we're taking a break in that sports match where the coach gets an opportunity to speak to the team members and say, guys, this is where we need to fix things a little bit, or this is where you are doing well, continue applying pressure there. If you were to take a look in the huddle at the moment, PLO, what would you tell your team in terms of how things are going in this match?
I would tell my team we are doing very badly. And if we are not careful, we are going to lose the match. And the tragedy is that the analogy only stops there, because the members of my team are so opinionated that they are no longer listening to the coaches. And that is the tragedy. But we cannot stop to exhort them to listen, because we have the vantage point of being on the ground. They live in a bubble, and they think that they know it all. That is the tragedy of the team that we have, who have the honor and privilege of running the affairs of this country. And if you permit me perhaps to go ahead of myself, look at the single issue of the floods that occurred in Nairobi. When I listen to the governor in tidbits trying to say, it is not my responsibility. Whose responsibility is it? It is the duty of those who occupy office to take responsibility. That is why I think one American president once said, the buck stops here, and the buck must stop there. So we are in a bad situation, because we have people who think they have the monopoly of wisdom and are unwilling to listen. And when a country finds itself in such a situation, history tells us that those who arrogate to themselves the monopoly of wisdom and knowledge often lead their countries through shortcuts to chaos.
But they seem to be we almost listen to every word that falls from their mouths, because I guess it's part of the job. But we also need to hear what it is that they're saying. And if yesterday was any example, when we listen to would-be leaders, or even listen to the leaders, not would-be, they are the leaders at the moment, they seem to believe that they have everything together. So if you're saying that the state of the nation is a pretty bad place, the people who are holding the place cards at the moment really believe that they've done. I mean, every time an opportunity is given, the president has said over and over again, we fixed the economy, we fixed education. I laugh at that even as I say it. We fixed education. Okay. You know, we've fixed healthcare. Yesterday morning, if you were here, you may have shed a tear. And I use his name as an example. Michael, when we were talking about healthcare, told us that he has to lie to his doctor about his symptoms. Because if he tells his doctor the truth, the doctor would have him go run some more tests so that they could see what's really going on inside. And you know why he lied, PLO? Because he doesn't have the money to go for those extra tests, because he's almost sure that's what his doctor would ask him to do. Not only that, but he's fully paid up for SHA. You know, and they've told him that his SHA has expired and there's nothing he can do.
You know, those in positions of leadership can say all they want, but let us look at the evidence.
Yes.
Because the evidence is what will speak to the reality. Not so long ago, before the floods, people were losing their animals in northeastern Kenya. Nobody cared about them. And I have families who have lost their cows, their goats, and nobody will compensate them. Right now, as we speak, in the last 1 week, floods have ravaged different parts of the country. It means that people are losing the crops. There is no fertilizer, and what you see in different countries are governors engaged in drama by releasing vehicles to distribute something called fertilizer, whose quality we do not know. Look at the health sector. Every week there is something of a scandal, and what we hear from the Minister for Health and members of that sector of the economy is that everything is fine. They poo-poo what the Auditor General is saying, but the testimonies are different. Look at the education sector. Even the minister does not know whether it should be CBC or CBE. And many people who can are going to the American system, the British system. Ask 90% of members of parliament and senior government officials where their children are going to school. Yeah. They are not going to this system. Ask them where they go when they are sick. They are either going to India or South Africa or Dubai or Germany or in the United States of America. They themselves have no faith in the systems that they are saying are working. Look at the number of individuals whose bills have not been paid by central government, by county governments. Look at the amount of money that at the same time is being spent for entertainment by governors and by the president in the State House. And look at the state of our roads. Look at the state of everything in this country. We have a few individuals who are having it all. It is Thomas Noel Isidore Sankara of Burkina Faso who said, we must make a choice. It is either champagne for a few or water for all. In Kenya, it is champagne and caviar for a very small minority, and it is pain and suffering for the majority. That is the state. So they can say all they want. And what you hear our politicians saying is, we want power. In other parts of the world, nobody just seeks power for power's sake. People seek to serve in order to improve the quality of individuals' lives. It's the only country, one of the few countries in the world where an individual is appointed as a cabinet secretary or a principal secretary, and they spend millions to hold a celebration party under the guise of Thanksgiving, and they attend in helicopters. We are the only country in the world where members of parliament fly in choppers to distribute bursary, and they have spent more money arriving at the venue. Yeah. Really, it is painful, and the tragedy and the pain at once is that these individuals no longer care. They believe that the Kenyan population is zombified, that the Kenyan population is hypnotized along ethnic lines, and that Kenyan population has short memory, and that when the elections come, what will happen is that they'll just be shooed in. Indeed, you can see that Kenya is treated like a war spoil, and people are saying whether they are going to have the arm or the leg. They are already distributing positions. If it is not the presidency, it is the cabinet ministries or the vice presidencies. They don't care. And it is a tragedy. So they can say all they want, but the evidence is against them. And we are selling everything because the country is technically insolvent. We are the only country in the world where a cabinet minister in charge of treasury says, I made a major announcement which was untrue. In other parts of the world, the individual would resign.
Yep.
But that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. We are selling our strategic assets. Perhaps it will be better. But the reason why we are doing this is simply because we are running broke. We are not doing well. The investors are not coming into this country because we are in an electioneering mood and they do not know how the country will pan out because the politicians are dividing this country into Nilots and Bantus. All institutions, constitutional commissions have been neutered. The Human Rights Commission neutered. National cohesion neutered. Parliament neutered. All critical institutions are neutered. We are being ruled through executive fiat. And that executive fiat is evident even in the devolved units. The governors are governing by executive fiat. The president is governing by executive fiat. Institutions have been ignored. You are doing affordable housing and you've ignored the National Housing Corporation, which has existed since 1960. You are doing all these buildings. There is no accompanying infrastructure. And this, we are told, is development. People now visit State House Nairobi and then they come out with something they call development. While when we were making the constitution, we said we did not want any single individual to be the one who has the yam and the knife and gives us portions of it at his whims. We wanted institutions to be strong. We wanted the people to be at the center of the things that are done. Today, we have something called public participation, but it's simply window dressing. Today, we bypass the Constitution by entering into something called the 10-point agenda. All the things that they mentioned there are in the Constitution. What we should be doing is to implement the Constitution. We are the only country in the world where people are still grappling with whether somebody who headed a party and has since departed said this or that. We want to be governed by ideas from the grave, and other countries are looking to the future. If you come to Nairobi, for example, where we are operating from, we had a 1947 master plan. We had a 1973 master plan. We have a 2014, 2016, 2030 master plan prepared by JICA. We have not implemented it. Now the governor of Nairobi has entered into a pact with the president on an 80 billion project. We are simply doing things. We are enticed by drama, and that drama is not taking us anywhere. You go to Kibera, you go to Korogosho, you go to Mathare, you go to Mukuruku and Jenga, and when you go to different parts of the country, you go to Lodwar, go to Migori, go to Homa Bay, go to Keroka, and ask the people whether this economy is working for them. It is not. It is not.
And perhaps this is the point where one asks the question, who takes the responsibility? Why do I say that? Because when Kenyans went to the elections 2022, they gave the governor of Nairobi the chance to lead this county, to ensure that drainage works, to ensure that garbage is collected, to ensure that the master plan 2014-2030 is actually implemented. He failed at that. The reason why it keeps on raining in Nairobi and Kenyans are marooned in floods. We talk about debt in the country. The president is there. His cabinet is there. When you find that money has been borrowed and it has not done anything, someone must take responsibility. The buck stops somewhere. We keep on looking at the health sector. Every other week there is a scandal. The cabinet secretary said that we know that those who are involved in this corruption are my fellow Muslims. That portends to the fact that the report shows who they are. All we need to do is to ensure that these people are brought to justice and money recovered back to Mwananchi. Why are we not saying, if the Nairobi government is unable to leave office, if the cabinet secretary fails in ensuring that healthcare works, that he is fired? The cabinet secretary for treasury would lie to Kenyans, and that is normal. Have we cultivated an idea or the behavior that anyone can walk away with nonsense?
Yes, indeed. Unfortunately, impunity, the occupation of public office in this country, immunizes one from prosecution and scrutiny. When I hear the governor of Nairobi and those who are his acolytes saying, Nairobi was built in the wrong place, can you believe it?
On a swamp.
On a swamp. Their countries, Rotterdam and Amsterdam, are built below sea level.
Venice.
Yes.
Venice. Nairobi worked. And the reason why Nairobi is not working is because the Nairobi City County and City Council before it were licensing people to build in wetlands, licensing people to build in areas where they ought not to have built. The roads have not been improved. We have no major sewer line in this city. We don't cater for storm water and storm drainage. We don't know how to harvest rainwater, and the net effect is that you have what you have. You only have to drive in Nairobi below the expressway and see what happens. Even the expressway itself turns into a river. What is now being done at Haile Selassie, the underpass, floods when it rains just for 2 hours. Yet those who are in charge think that they have no responsibility. When they are about to be impeached, their political godfathers intervene. If you are to remove the neighborhood associations in Nairobi, Nairobi would collapse. 80% of why Nairobi appears to work is because the neighborhood associations are now taking care of their water. They are taking care of their roads. They are taking care of their garbage collection. The county government of Nairobi collects rates and does pretty much little. It is tragic. In other parts of the world, such individuals would have been removed from office. They would have been punished. But here they receive national honors. The same is true with the national government. We have individuals who are said to issue passports without scrutiny. We have individuals who are presiding over education sector, and they say they are ghost schools. They say they are ghost teachers. And the accounts where they receive the monies are not ghost accounts, they are real accounts. And nobody cares and nobody deals with that. And what have they done? They have now hired young people to be bloggers online. You mention anything that is sensible, they hit you. They use artificial intelligence to malign the honest and the truth speakers. And yet, as the Kiswahili saying goes, mtego wa panya huingia waliomo na wasiokuwemo. And we have a duty as Kenyans to ensure that we protect this country for these generations and generations yet to be born. Unfortunately, you are right in saying today impunity is the game in town. Politicians are operating above the law and outside of the law. The law does not apply to them. They can say and do anything they want, and no pain will visit them. When a country finds herself in such a space, a country is on a downward spiral. This beautiful country must be saved by her sons and daughters who love her. And in this regard, the population must wake up before it is too late.
Do you think that not talking about these issues then allows them to continue in the manner in which they do? Because there is a bit of freedom that evil enjoys in silence. And if you don't speak out about some of these things that we see, or all of them that we see, then are we just as complicit?
It is Wole Soyinka who wrote a book, "The Man Dies in Silence Who Remains Silent in the Face of Tyranny." Wisdom of that statement is that we have a duty to raise our voices and to identify and to speak against wrongdoing, even when we cannot be heard in our purest tones. History is consistent in telling us that sometimes, and sometime when we do not know, the voices that are rejected today are the voices that will be considered prophetic in the future. We have a duty to keep talking. And no matter how few we are, as Henry Gibson said in his book, An Enemy of the People, the strongest man and the strongest woman in the world is the man or woman who stands alone. In matters of truth, there is no democracy. The majority who are in bed with lies are still liars.
You know, when you sit and look at the country that we are in, you look at the taxes. Kenyans being taxed, and painfully so, nothing they see is happening. All they see is individuals who are showing, and like you would say, poo-pooing on the face in terms of there's nothing you will do. It's a do mentality. You find individuals are out here being asked to take responsibility for their actions, and all we see individuals doing is, I am with the president, I am with the government. Why? The reason why you see cabinet secretaries would get onto campaign vehicles and campaign which is against the law. Today we look at individuals who have been flagged not to be fit to hold office, but they are sailed through the conveyor belt and they end up on ballot boxes, they end up on ballot papers, they are elected into office. It is the reason why today you find that in open glare of cameras, individuals would line up to be bribed, and that does not shake us.
My brother, if you are to take a roll call today, you would discover that a good portion of members of parliament, to mean National Assembly, to mean Senate, members of county assembly are out of the country as we speak in a necessary benchmarking trip simply to make money. And if they are not outside of the country, they are moving from one place to the other, getting per diems. And as you rightly say, individuals whose history we know are the ones who are telling us what to do, and they are lining up men and women and distributing money to them. And the IEBC, which is charged with ensuring that our elections are devoid of corruption, are as silent as the graveyard. And then they will say the elections were free and fair. The question that we must ask ourselves, what moral decadence have we drowned in, that we are so numb that what is wrong is no longer wrong, that we now have our own versions of the truth, and that is what carries us along. And if you dare say that something is wrong, they'll tell you, but who can always be right? And yet, what we are talking about are critical things. They are compromising the future not only of our young men and women, but even the safety of this nation. When we talk about the quality of roads, it is not just that the drivers are the ones who are at fault. Even the quality of the roads must be called into question. And yet these critical things are not talked about. Instead, we are engaged in what I call administration and governance through drama. It is drama at all levels. That is why you see when we talk about administration, every elected official says they want some funds because it is through those funds that they can engage in drama. The MCA wants an allocation to engage in drama. The Member of Parliament has CDF, which is used for drama. The Senate has money which they use for drama. The women reps also need money which they use for drama. The president has no shortage of funds which is used for drama. So we are engaged in a theater of the absurd. And we are spectators who are supposed to cheer. We cheer when one of our own has been appointed a cabinet minister. Then we say, we are now in government. As if that paid your bills. And as you rightly say, you look at any of your bills, look at the pay slips that you have, the amount of money that is going to government. Look at your electricity bill and see how much money is going into taxes, and ask yourself how it is being used. Is it being used for the benefit of the people? No, largely no. So we are in a bad space. We are in a hole, and we should stop digging. And good leadership must be accountable. In the last few days, I've been looking at the 2 sessions of the Chinese parliament. 5,000 people gathered. They are looking at how their country is going to be governed for the next 15 years. And you can see the sobriety with which presentations are being made, the responsibility with which they are thinking. They are cascading it down to the people. And here we have individuals who are permanent members of public participation in every area. You say, in fact, when they introduce themselves, you say, I'm a member of public participation, because public participation has become a joke. What can we do beyond lamentation? Civic awareness. I think it is at this forum at which I said at one time that in Greece of old, they divided the society into tribalists, idiots, and citizens. Who are idiots? Idiots are those who think that they can just live without being concerned with what is going in their country. I'm not a politician, they say. Therefore, I can buy my 4-wheel in order to wade through the waters. I can cabro walk my driveway. Those are idiots, because they will be affected anyway. Then there are tribalists. The only thing they are thinking about is my tribesman going to be in this or that position, as if that ever helped them. Then they are citizens. The citizens think about the now. They think about tomorrow. They want things to be done properly. They are asking NTSA, now that you are introducing all this technology, are your traffic lights working? Are your roads marked so that I know how it is going to be done? Is everybody on the road paying insurance so that the border pays the insurance, the matatu pays the insurance, and everything is good and sound? Or you have just introduced a scheme for revenue collection? A citizen asks those questions. And our appeal through media such as this is to invite Kenyans. Let us be Kenyan citizens. Sometimes I feel that there are very few Kenyans, because we have a majority of tribalists and a majority of idiots who don't care about this country. And the time that we are able to speak the truth and speak firmly and love this country, that is how we'll save her. Otherwise, countries have been lost easily. We nearly lost this country in 2007, 2008, because we allowed idiots and tribalists to rule the roost.
I think about what the citizens should do, and it's very clear that we've had conversations over the last couple of days, PLO, and that one thing that seems to have run through is that if we just actually follow the Constitution, because it's not just laws and judges and courts and lawyers, the Constitution, which is essentially the spirit of the country. If you follow what it says, then we would see that these things, which many are accused of just lamenting about, then essentially are sorted out, and you wouldn't have a problem. You would not have an issue if the rule of law was followed. You would not have a situation where people are being bribed in the city to put up illegal structures. You would not have that. You would not have a situation whereby you give the contract for garbage collection to your friend. You would not have a situation whereby you have ghost schools, like you said, but real accounts. I mean, you wouldn't have a situation, PLO, where somebody puts a document down and they claim that one patient has had open heart surgery 4 times in 24 hours. If we were following the Constitution.
If we followed the Constitution, if we followed the laws, if we followed planning, we would work it. And did it ever work? Yes, it did. There was a time in this country, and I was alive and well, when we had in the education sector, we had the Kenya School Equipment Scheme. We got exercise books publicly funded. We got mathematical sets publicly funded. We got school uniform publicly funded. We had those days. We had days in this country where the medical facilities may have been few, but you walked into a dispensary and you are treated and you are referred to a national hospital. We had days in this Nairobi city when garbage was collected. We had days when people would be allocated houses built by the Kenya National Housing Corporation. We had days in this country where through Kenya Industrial Estates, businesses would be incubated. We had days in this country where if you committed a crime, you would be punished. Then there came new pharaohs in town who knew the law not. They thought that they were gods and demigods. And since those pharaohs came, Kenya has never been the same again. For us, there is no constitution. For us, we can operate and create our constitution called the 10-point agenda. The national constitution does not matter. For us, we can avoid the law relating to devolution and enter into pacts. For us, we can create our own funds. You are right. If only we could simply say for 1 year, even for the next 6 months, we simply say, let us follow the law and let everybody sit in their offices and work. We would save more than 50% of our budget, and this country would begin to move in the right direction.
People will tell you, sorry, Dennis, people will tell you that the things that you talk about, garbage was collected, school books, uniforms were provided by the government for students, that you could go to a health facility, or that school equipment was made available by government funding. They would tell you that the population was less, and that today there's not enough money to go round the bulging population.
I would tell them that we are taxed more than 100 times more than we were taxed them. And I would tell them that if they were to go into our country now has a GDP, give or take, of 147 billion United States of dollars, depending on how you calculate it. And I want you to go and ask yourself how much money is in the hands of politicians, how much wealth in the hands of politicians since 1963 and in the hands of senior public servants. It is 3 times the amount of our GDP, which means that money is available. It has been privatized. And for that reason, their argument is dead on arrival. Look, how is it that a cabinet minister or a governor whose salary is no more than 1 million Kenya shilling is able to build a hotel without a loan within 2 years or within 3 years? How do they buy all these apartments and have high range and school their children in the most expensive schools in Kenya and the most expensive universities in the world? Why? Because the money that ought to go into education is going to those ghost schools, those ghost accounts. These individuals who are being subjected to operations for open heart surgeries, money is being stolen through those avenues. When garbage is purportedly collected in Nairobi, where do they collect that garbage? Water is being provided. You go to places such as Karen, such as Muthangari, such as Runda, such as Gigiri. Most people are operating on boreholes, borehole water. So the question is, where is the money? And we know where the money is. That is why individuals go to Harambes and they give 5 million, 10 million, 20 million as Harambee. And we say nothing about it. Where do they get the money? It is stolen from us. It is our taxes. That is the money that ought to go to the Kenya School Equipment Scheme. That is the money that ought to go to health. That is the money that is supposed to supply us with good agriculture. And I'm one who believes there is nothing called free education. There is free nothing. It is publicly funded by us through our taxes. That is what we need to do. It is happening in other countries. This country, with a good working population, can do it. But no more than 5,000 people in this country hold possibly over 70% of the wealth of this country. My statistics may be wrong, but they are not far from the truth. That is where we are,
PLO, you've traveled a lot. Fact to tell you that for one to get, say, a citizenship for a place like America, there's a process that you follow. And once you've been given the status that you are a citizen, it is usually met with clap and joy because of the rigorous process that it goes through. I bring you back home. We just found out the other day that there are warlords who managed to get Kenyan passports. That they didn't go through the processes, that the details, even when you follow through the system, the images that we see and details were that of a child, but the passport belonged to an adult. That Kenyans today are unable to get passports in this country, they're rightfully so document that they should have, but warlords can get passports in the country. You are an advocate of Kenya and Tanganyika. What does this do to Kenya's image and foreign policy before the rest of the world?
Let me tell you, my brother, I'm one who believes that we should have a borderless Africa. I'm one who believes that we should have an African passport. I'm one who believes in those things. But for the moment, we are a sovereign state and our government issues our passport. It means that when I have a Kenyan passport, I am a citizen of the Republic of Kenya to be protected as such. There must be a process. I must be a citizen of the Republic of Kenya. Right now, I can tell you I have clients in my law office for whom I've tried to obtain citizenship and by extension passport for the last 5 years.
I know.
Without success. But we are being told, and I know as a fact that people, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are people who simply come and pay some money and get passports. What does it say? That next time I'm traveling to Europe and America or anywhere in the world, they'll question, but are you truly a Kenyan citizen or you just bought the passport? Matters of security come into play. Matters of the strength of our passport come into play. There was a time when I could travel and many Kenyans could travel to places such as the United Kingdom and be there without any visas, or to the Schengen without any visas, or to other African countries without any visas. Now our passports are under scrutiny. And the individuals who are alleged to have ignored the law and these procedures are still in office. And possibly they have national honors such as the Moran of the Golden Spear, Elder of the Burning Spear. They have them in serious countries. And I'm using the word civilized very deliberately. In countries where governance is civilized, national honors would be withdrawn from such individuals. Such individuals would lose their offices. Such individuals should be in court.
Without a thought.
In court. But here, it appears on the newspaper headline one day, then we are on the next business the following day. In fact, it is the newspaper that revealed it that will be vilified as being sensational. And in the business of sensationalization of issues. That is how we deal with critical issues in our beloved country. Perhaps we deserve it. Nyerere used to say, mkikubali ujinga katika siasa, ujinga wenu itawatafuna. Ujinga wenu itawatafuna. Your stupidity will chew you up. We have tolerated it for too long. Sasa inatutafuna.
I've seen a phrase that has been turned into a question over the last few months by many a Kenyan. And it has been, previously it was a phrase and said Kenyans are not angry enough. And now it has become a question that are Kenyans angry enough of the things that we give examples of? And unfortunately, every day presents an opportunity with examples of some of these things, sadly, but you never run out of it, do you?
Yeah.
That there's always something that you can say, oh my God, I thought that today would be a day where maybe, we would just be able to say, okay, this is a good one.
There is a fella, Anikula Pokuti, the Nigerian musician, said in Nigerian pidgin English, man they laugh because man they cry.
They cry.
And what he meant is, you laugh sometimes because humor is the only thing that can move you along. Otherwise, you will be crying all the day.
And I think Kenyans, in their collectivity, the anger has not welled up. When anger actually acquires the levels that it acquires, then there are places to look at. The Arab Spring. Madagascar, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. It means that we are being given time. For some of us who believe in higher powers, the God is still telling us, you can repair it. But your cup of iniquity is getting full by the day. Today, even when you listen to bishops and archbishops, they are not inspiring. They say with their mouths what they do not believe in their hearts. They receive money from thieves gleefully. So Kenyans are not yet angry enough. And that is why the leadership says we can do what we want. They can never get angry. And how do they think they can never get angry? Because they think that we are so ethnically aligned and so ethnically divided that it is easy to play ethnicities against each other and tell them that is a Kamba thing, that is a Luo thing, that is a Gikuyu thing, that is a Kalenjin thing, that is a Kisi thing, that is a Giriama thing, that is a Somali thing. And there can never be something that is a Kenyan thing. That, I think, is what the politicians think when they sit and say, for that reason, they can never unite to say that education should be tackled, that agriculture should be tackled, that health should be tackled, that corruption should be tackled. But because if he has stolen, he is one of our own.
We're in a country where we want to protect the law. Today, NTSA has said that it's coming up with speed cameras. A good thing, okay. But are we having conversations on who is leading the pack in breaking the law? Why do I say that? Over the weekend in Siaya, the vehicle that was carrying the cabinet secretary for health hit an individual on the road and they died. The statement that we saw being posted by the ministry itself is that the cabinet secretary stopped and did what? And ensured that emergency services came through. But the locals themselves said that was not the case. They challenged the statement that was put up by the ministry. It is not once, not twice that we've seen individuals in leadership with their flags breaking the law, using the wrong side. Yet here we are telling Kenyans that we need to do what? To follow the law. You look at the president today leading the party in breaking the law, because the law on campaigning is so clear on when campaigning ought to start. But the president has been campaigning for 4 years. Today we are here talking about implementing the constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. And one asks the question, when Kenyans get arrested, they end up in court. But individuals who break the law every day, and we see that happen, our EBC is quiet. You find the Chapter 10 commissions are quiet. EACC not saying anything. When will we look at the constitution, the law, as the guiding principle for everyone, whether it is the president or the lowest Kenyan one would want to put that exists in the country?
You know, I remember when the administration of what was called NAC came into power. And the messaging from the then head of state, the late Mwai Kibaki, was that we were going to obey the law.
Yeah.
And anybody who did not obey the law would be punished. The people themselves started enforcing the law to ensure that matatus drove on the right side and the right number of individuals were actually carried in the matatus. When the late Mishuki then said, as a part of creating order, that we would require people to wear seatbelts, they were implemented. It means, therefore, that the people desire that the law be followed. But after that, and after a short while, we went back into our default mode of lawlessness. Today, when you see how people drive on our roads, and somebody once said that if you want to know how a country is governed, see how people drive on their roads. It is chaos. It is war. When you are traveling to work in the morning, you are prepared for war. Courtesy has disappeared. The roads themselves are not marked. The roads have no furniture. And because they have no furniture, you never know whether you're on the right line or in the wrong line. The rules that govern driving on a roundabout are not known. The border will ride on the wrong side of the road and nothing happens. We are told not to overtake on one side, they overtake everywhere. And that is done in the plain sight of law enforcement officers. The president himself is on record as saying that traffic officers are assigned there because it is the most lucrative department of the police sector. We know what is wrong. We see how cabinet ministers with their sirens, even when they are going nowhere, are in the business of harassing people. We see them how they harass people with their helicopters. It is the era of lawlessness. And the tone must come from leadership. The tone must come from leadership. I'm going to say this. In 1986, I was working as an intern in Tanzania under Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere, and had the advantage of traveling with him in one car. He had only one bodyguard, and he stopped at every traffic light. He was then a former president. He did not disobey the law at all. Akaniambia kijana Mkenya, lazima tutii sheria. Lazima tuishi chini ya sheria. Ndio nidhamu, ndio ustaarabu. Tukianza kuvunja sheria, basi tumekwisha kama taifa. And that is the tone that must be set everywhere. The Singapore that we want to travel to via, I'm told, is no longer Singapore now. We are now going to Canaan. Singapore is just a stopover. But whichever way we want to go to that Singapore, people obey traffic lights. If you disobey the law, you are punished. If you as much as drop a chewing gum on the road, you'll be fined instantly. And the people themselves obey the law. The leadership obeys the law. I have traveled to different parts of Kenya and I see governors with their entourage. There is nobody on the road, but they have these sirens on. I wonder for what. So sirens have become a badge of honor. It is not about anything.
Yeah.
So our understanding of the things relating to power and position is because they massage our egos. And that is the tragedy. So in simple, straight answer to your question, the country called Kenya must engage in what I call moral rearmament. We must have a day when all media houses are simply saying, tutii sheria, tufuate sheria, tuambatane na sheria. I look forward to that day. And if that happens and people begin to be courteous and to follow the law, this is one of the best countries in the world because our people are hardworking. But unfortunately now, in order to survive, you have to follow them. That is the mantra of many Kenyans. But how can I survive? Today, if you stop at traffic lights, people hoot at you.
True.
And they come and roll their windows and insult you because you are doing the right thing. Today, we live in a country where wrong is right and right is wrong. We must right the situation.
I want us to go into a time where we're actually looking at what to do to right the situation, and we'll probably do that when we come back from the news, but just taking a few minutes to look at something here. That what I've coined as something called leastism. So a road is supposed to be tarmacked and you do something and you say at least. I was in the presence, PLO, 3 days ago of a contractor not too far from here. And he said, and the road that was built just a year ago, and in fact, I mentioned it here when I was saying, our road is being done finally. Do you know what this man said to me? He said, well, what do you expect? The local MP wanted some money. The people at the roads board wanted some money. So whatever I was left with is whatever I used to build the road. Now the rains have come and the road has been destroyed. But do you know what he said? That road is what I was left with after having to bribe people to be given the contract. And he said, at least it's not what it was before.
Yeah.
At leastism.
And they say, well, at least Kenya's doing okay. At least the lights are on. You can't compare it to Nigeria, for example, where President Bola Tinubu is reigning over a country whereby the lights are hardly on, but you've got some of the greatest resources on the African continent. At least Kenya, the lights are on. At least, somebody's sweeping the street. At least that's happening. You can't compare it to other things, other places where things are an absolute mess.
Minimalism. It is tragic because the money that is distributing to all these mandarins is meant to go to the construction of the road, which ought to have a life and which ought to be approved before payment is made. Where are the professionals who are involved? They are not punished. Where are the institutions that ought to approve the quality of the road? They are not punished. So people now maintain their lifestyles on the basis of ill-gotten wealth, and nothing happens to them. Now they have come up with this thing that they call, you rightly called, leastism. We say we compare ourselves with the worst, and we say we are better than the worst. Therefore, we are okay. Is that what we should be doing? Shouldn't we aim for the best? Should we not get what we have paid for? Shouldn't we, as I have already said, take money that has been taken and appropriated from us by these mandarins who don't deserve it, who are living like multi-billionaires, and have them punished, and those monies taken, brought back and put in the consolidated fund for purposes of doing the thing that they ought to have done in the first place? The question is, are we prepared? Because it will metaphorically be bloody. People will lose their wealth. People will lose their status. People's children will stop going to the schools that they are going to. They'll stop visiting the hospital that they are visiting. And that must happen because we are not thinking about Kenya now. We are thinking about Kenya 100 years from today.
The question then lingers in our hearts and in our minds in terms of what people then must do. We'll come back after the news with PLO and perhaps we'd find direction in that. Good morning.
The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice. This is the Situation Room.
Case studies. Because you had to look at a scenario where the very thing that you're learning about played out for you to understand the process through which the activity, how it engaged, and the outcome of it. And so there's so many case studies about the things that we speak of today. And then for you to say, so then what do we do? What do we do to get to the solution that we are so seeking? We've already established that people have not concerted this anger into one place that it can become inertia towards something. But people, there's a hunger, there's a desire in the hearts and minds of people that I look at the people and I see them speak with nostalgia about the times when the streets were clean and garbage was collected and that you could find a bus at 1:17 on a Tuesday. You knew your bus was going to be there. And I see people speak about these times and they speak about that with its joy. It is satisfaction in a system that worked. So what do you do? What do you do at this point? What did the people in those countries that we look to today, what did they do that got them to the point that we use them as case studies today?
You know, there's a book that I believe young Kenyans will have read. It's called Betrayal in the City by Francis Imbuga. There is a character there called Misuse who said, it was better while we waited. And let me say, what will we do? And what will we do must be in the context of our desire to have things done in accordance with the law. When in 1992 we started agitating for a new constitutional dispensation, we thought that the problem was the constitution. And that if we had a new constitutional dispensation that made different provisions on issues of governance, then Kenya would be better. It is now many years, over 15 years since we gave ourselves the Constitution of Kenya 2010. But it appears, number one, that the question of centralized power, executive power being exercised by fiat is back with us. It appears that what we said as issues relating to ethics have not been complied with. So what must we do? Running up to the election, number one, it is important that we empower the institutions that we created. Let the legislature, the National Assembly, and the Senate do their work. Remove all funds that are being managed or patronized by MPs or MCAs or senators, and let it be dealt with by different institutions. If it is in roads, is Kura, is Kera, is Kenha, so that Parliament resumes its oversight role, number one. Number two, let all institutions that were created, the Kenya Human Rights Commission, the Commission for Cohesion, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, give that commission powers to prosecute. And once you do that, you'll have been moved. Then let us also go into the IBC. And if we want to introduce hygiene in our politics in the run-up to the election, before they clear anybody who has served, one of the things that should happen now is that all persons who in the last 15 years have served as MPs, as MCAs, as governors, should declare their wealth, whether owned by their spouses or their children, or through their maids and through their drivers and through their companies and through proxies, and we match them against their wealth declaration form. And if they are found to have declared improperly, let them be barred from holding office because they do not satisfy Chapter 6 of the Constitution. Let us ensure that anybody who has been filmed in the last few years bribing people by giving them money barred from election, if you do that, you would bar at least 10,000 people from participating in the electoral process in this country. Let every person who wants to contest therefore be subjected to a scrutiny of the wealth that he or she owns. In that way, we'll be looking at the ethical issues. Let us give meaning to national values. If we do that and have people forfeiting their wealth and those who ought to be investigated by the DCI and by Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission are subjected to the law, then people will know that is now business unusual. And when business becomes unusual, then people begin to toe the line. That is what Lee Kuan Yew's administration did in Singapore. That is what Park Chung-hee did in South Korea. That is what Deng Xiaoping did in China after the Tiananmen Square. That is what is happening as I speak now in Botswana. That's what is happening now as I speak in Burkina Faso. That is what is happening as I speak now in Mauritius. That, if it happens here, let me tell you, our economy will jump to 300 billion USD and corruption will become the exception rather than the rule. So what am I saying? IEBC, wake up. What am I saying? Parliament, wake up. To mean Senate, wake up. What am I saying? National Assembly, wake up. Governors, wake up. And if we do only those things and introduce discipline into the manner in which we do things, my sister and brother will have started walking on that path. And perhaps that is what the president should look at as his legacy. If he wanted a real legacy, to be remembered as the president who introduced hygiene and sanitized Kenyan politics, let him bite the bullet. Otherwise, this idea of broad-based government, this idea of 10-point agenda, this idea of forming committees, when you can't solve it or when you don't want to do it, the saying goes, form a committee. And we are told that a camel is a horse that was made by a committee. That is how the products of committees look like. You can never tell where the hump is, where the leg is.
You know, we talk about graft.
Yeah.
And I want to look at it from the eyes of Kenyans and how perhaps Kenyans need to start looking at graft. Because we need to start connecting the dots on what we get denied when graft happens. 11 billion shillings is lost. What would that mean to your local hospital and your access to healthcare? We talk about education and the ghost schools, ghost students, but real account. What has that done to your grade 10, who today does not have textbooks, who today does not have capitation that has ended up to them? Because we want to go to Singapore. Let's go to Singapore. What did Lee Kuan Yew do when he got into office? Dismissed his friends from office. We talk about Korea, that we also say is a model that we are as well looking at. What has happened to President Park Geun-hye, that corruption scandal with Samsung? What happened? She went to jail. President Yoon, the immediate former president, what has happened because of martial law? He is in jail.
Absolutely.
But in Kenya, when you talk about graft, NYS scandal would happen, but then Mtuwetu, we elect them as governor. We look at Migori County, Okothobado, and we have the murder cases that are there, corruption cases that are there. What do we do? Huyo ni Mtuwetu. Are Kenyans really angry on matters to do with graft for them to say that we stand as Kenyans to say no to graft because we have been denied services and that your rightful place where you belong is jail?
You know, you are so right that perhaps the burden that we have is to make the person in Lagdera, the person in Keroka and Kehancha, to see that the reason why there are no books in your local primary is because somebody sitting in Nairobi sent money to a non-existent school, but that money is now his and is now owning a helicopter. To tell him that the Kenya police hired motor vehicles at exorbitant prices and paid somebody who is now a multi-billionaire. And when you go to hospital and you don't have drugs, the reason why you don't have drugs is because of this. That The road where there was an accident was compromised, the quality was compromised, and that is why, in addition to driver error and other things, that is why there is an accident. The day we begin to link it, the reason why your son and daughter can graduate from Masinde Muliro University or Kabianga University and no longer has a job is because somebody asked for a bribe of 100 million and a potential investor went to Ethiopia and Tanzania instead of investing in Kenya. Because the sugar factories are closed and you are not getting paid is because somebody wants to import sugar from Brazil or rice. The day that connection is created, then the scales will fall from people's eyes and the wax will melt in their ears, and we will have a Bangladeshi moment. We will have a Madagascar moment. We'll have a moment where people will say, this must not happen. And if that message is coming from Usenge in Siaya to Msambweni
In
Kwale, then Kenya will begin to change for the better.
So when the connection happens, when you can see, because it's interesting, because I want to take that what you said. The Auditor General said, you know what, and I think maybe is the first time that she's spoken in this manner, where she came out yesterday very clearly and she said, I am recommending that Parliament actually says, I'm suggesting that Parliament recommends investigation into these things. Because what can she do? She can give the numbers. She can give the numbers. But she said very clearly, investigate, because we can see her office is apolitical.
Yeah.
Her job is to give the numbers. So if you can make a connection between these monies that we are saying disappear and the fact that your son or daughter is unable to go to school, I mean, it's a crying shame that there were children in the so-called free, which you said is not free, it's publicly funded education system, who did not sit critical exams last year because they couldn't afford it.
Yes.
They couldn't go back to school. There are people today, we had a baraza for education the other day, and parents sat here and told us, I used to pay 3,000 shillings for my child to go to school. Now, going into grade 10 into this new system, I have to pay 56,000. The difference is unimaginable to many people, and that forms the majority of the population. We should not be deceived that because you can buy lunch at 200 shillings, that everybody can. It's not the case. The majority of people cannot do that. So for them to imagine that your son or daughter now must go to school and you pay 56,000 shillings against 3,000, and on top of that, there's more that must be paid. It's two totally different worlds. Now, if what you're saying, if you make the connection between this investment that goes somewhere else and the money that is missing, taken, stolen, and that your child cannot go to school, that is what activates the moment where people say, enough is enough?
You know, a friend of mine told me that we should call theft by its surname. This idea of using its Christian name, corruption, is what is confusing us. It is theft on an industrial scale. And I believe that we have a duty to help them make that connection. And it's going to come through repetition, through telling them this is the reason why it is like this. It's not going to be easy. Town hall meetings are going to be significant in this regard. And I was telling a friend of mine that one of the things that IEBC should ban is this thing called political rallies, where people just come and others shout and others dance and use vulgar language. Let's go into town hall meetings, where if you say you are going to do this, you are interrogated by the people. Like in Nairobi, for example, if you wanted to improve Nairobi, let those who want to improve Nairobi go to the neighborhood associations and tell us what you are going to do. Because today, I can assure you, if Nairobi were to be run by the neighborhood associations, within 1 month, Nairobi would change dramatically for the better. And I'm saying this in order to answer your question that we must connect the dots. Because people are continuing to pay the monies that they are paying. Meanwhile, your member of parliament has come up with at a public rally with bursary forms which he or she is distributing, with a dummy check in which he's saying, I've given you bursary forms, and at the end of the day, each one of the individuals will go home with 3,000 shillings, and yet you need 56,000 shillings. So this drama is meant for the cameras. This drama is meant for the feel good, but it doesn't begin to solve the problem. And this connection of the dots will make the people say, once I did not know, but now I know. And that now that I know, I will do something about it. That is the only thing that we ought to do. For the moment, people are able to say what you described so very aptly in lending a word to the English language, at leastism, at least. At least Mungu atafanya. Mungu. So even this idea of God, you see, we are very prayerful. And people now are surrendering and saying, God will do it for us. God will do. God is busy with serious business. God has already commanded you to go and earn by the sweat of thy brow, and not to raise up princesses who will lord it over you. It is your duty to now rise up and talk with the firmness that will open their eyes. And I believe that we can do that. The voices of reason, the voices of the citizens, the voices of the humane must continue to remain alive, because it is only then that we are going to rescue this country.
Can it be reinstalled? I read when Ronald Reagan was president of the United States, one of the things that still is an ideology that people study today was Reaganomics.
Yes.
And they came from a time where capitalism and as an ideology was going to rule governments. And that's the time that we saw the spurring of a lot of businesses that are global leaders today. They're businesses started by individuals. And he said that the capitalism essentially was going to take over the economy of America. And he put it in the minds of Americans and said, you know what? For almost everything that you see, turn it into $1. And it became, they imbibed it so that we see it today still, that they're not going to go anywhere unless there is something that is linked directly to that ideology. But it came off a time where they were still reeling from the effects of the Great Depression, and many things had come in whereby, Hollywood had been created, the California gold rush was now having been spread around parts of the country. But he said, you know what, we can come back from this and turn everything that you see into an opportunity to make $1, to make $1, essentially.
Let me give you an example that is a lot more at home in terms of comparison. In Malawi, when Mbingu wa Mutharika became the president, he said Malawi is going to export maize within one season. And what we are going to do about it is we are going to look at how we deal with the local farmer. And within one season, Malawi was exporting maize, which means it can be done. You are right in saying that once a good idea is implemented in the minds and hearts of a people, and it is watered and is facilitated and is enabled by government and is financed, then people acquire wings to fly. And when they see that we are some Kenya, you look at the startups that originate from Kenya, is one of the highest in the continent of Africa, the startups, which means that there is hunger and appetite to invent and innovate. But where is the facilitation? What we see are drama. We see Hustler Fund, and we are now told 12.5 billion has not been paid. Because you did not incubate them at Kenya Industrial Estate. We see Nyota. We dramatize. We are pork barreling using good ideas. The ideas in and of themselves are innocent and good, but implementation is half the journey. And the right mindset, because the mind is the standard of everything. So I can't agree with you more. I often ask, what is our philosophy on economic development? In 1965, when we had session of paper number 10, we said it was socialism. Economy would be capitalistic, but it would have elements of socialism. There was a philosophy. Today, if you ask, what is our philosophy of economic management? Nobody can tell you. They'll tell you we have Hustler Fund, we have Uwezo Fund, we have Women's Fund, we have Nyota Fund. We are empowering people. Empowering them in what direction? All of them are going to be producers of roast maize. All of them are going into sugar cane. Have we desegregated the market? What is the market? You want to be a poultry farmer? What are we going? Where are we going to sell the eggs? You know, these are the critical things. Right now, let me give you the egg example. Give or take, we consume 9 billion eggs in a year in this country. We produce no more than 5 billion, which means there is a shortfall. What can we do deliberately to empower farmers in Central Province, in Central Kenya, in Western Kenya, in Eastern Kenya,
reduce the cost
to produce? Are you enabling them? Have you planted the seed? So my view is perhaps we in the African continent inherited systems of governance that we do not understand. The only thing we love about systems of governance is that it gives us power and privilege. That is why you can hear people shout, we want power. What they want are the things that accompany power.
The trappings.
Because when you acquire power, you no longer pay for your hospital bills, you no longer pay for your children's education, you no longer buy cars, you no longer buy fuel. The roads are cleared for you. If you are parliamentarian now, your pension is guaranteed. You travel on a diplomatic passport. You are a demigod. That is why they are asking for power. You cannot be prosecuted. They don't want power because they want to serve. They want power because power is sweet. The Baganda said, Entebe woma. Power is sweet. If from an African perspective, Entebe woma in Luganda. But they don't want power to serve, to roll up their sleeves and serve.
And perhaps that's what Kenyans need to start pushing. Why? Because if Kenyans start pushing servitude, that you are here to serve, you're not here for the trappings of power and what it comes with, that when you are a government that is saying universal healthcare, the number one candidate to use that universal healthcare should be the president and the leaders that are in office, because then Kenyans would trust that healthcare is working, that you're pushing a new system of education, that those that are telling Kenyans it is working should have their children consume that education for it to work. Why? I reckon there is no one who would want to put their children into a system that does not work. Them themselves would not want to access healthcare that is not working. That Kenyans should push for each and every single person to consume that which they have guaranteed 55 million Kenyans to be working.
Should MPs be part-time in this country effectively and only paid on allowance? My own view that why is a Kenyan MP full-time? They are actually not full-time. Because those who are lawyers continue to practice as law, those who are engineers continue to practice,
those who run their businesses,
those who run their business, and yet they are the best paid relative to our GDP in the world. So you are right. As long as we have individuals who only get into public office for purposes of the benefits that they access, then we will never get what we deserve. The time is now. Easier said than done, but as Fidel Castro once said, when you are banging on a door that is closed, never get tired. When you are getting tired, that is when the door is about to give in.
PLO, what would political goodwill in implementing Constitution 2010, because where I sit, we have never really enjoyed the fruits of Constitution of Kenya 2010. What would political goodwill do to the Constitution in terms of implementation, and what would that result to Monanchi?
You know, when we had and created something called the opposition and gave them political parties fund, it was assumed that these political parties who are not in the administration would then be the watchdog to ensure that their political party in power would then implement the constitution. But you and me have witnessed that immediately after the election, the parties that have not won the election want to go to bed with the party that is in power, because in Kenya, they say nobody wants to be in the opposition. They say it is cold.
It's cold.
And cold means that they don't have the opportunity to access funds illicitly. So what it would take is for us to build institutions. Unfortunately, we created these funds, and these funds have been privatized, so that what we call political parties are also not political parties. They are just individual outfits, and the money that they get, I think, is just used for their own benefit to fly helicopters around. Institution building is serious business. Unfortunately, we are not good at it, which also calls into question, we should re-examine our governance systems and our political culture and governance culture. It is only then that we are going to be in a position to begin to change this thing. But if the law and the wheels spin at the speed at which they are spinning, it will take 100 years for it to even spin meaningfully.
When a doctor is treating cancer, the words that are used are radical treatment. There's another word, I can't remember what it is, but you don't come at the thing that has eaten away at your living cells with a soft touch. You deal with it properly so that and then even after you've cut it out, you blast it with some radiation, and you do all kinds of things to ensure that it doesn't come back. And it's often been seen as the way in which you deal with a lot of the things that has gone wrong within societies. We've seen it. We can use the examples because they've worked. That you didn't deal with corruption with an, okay, please don't do it again, PLO. You didn't deal with, theft of public funds with, okay, well, just put it back and you'll be fine, in order to solve the problem. Do you deal with these things with an iron fist?
Yes. Today look at if you are going to deal with them within a constitutional order, because there are extra constitutional ways. But if you are going to deal with them within constitutional order, look at what John Joseph Pombe Magufuli did in Tanzania. He came there and said, hapa ni kazi tu. The same law, nothing had changed. He was simply implementing the same law. He said, I've found that forex bureaus were being used to smuggle money outside of Tanzania. Closed all forex bureaus in Dar es Salaam. He's found that gold was being smuggled. He cancelled and entered into contracts. Hapa ni kazi tu. That was radical within the constitution. The same thing happened with Paul Kagame in 1994 after the genocide. Radical. Things were done. The same is happening now in Botswana with Boko. Within the law, but it is business unusual. That is one model. The other model is you simply push the politicians away. But I am one who prefers, for the sake of the country, a radical system within constitutional order. Because that gives you predictability. That ensures that you are walking on a road that is much firmer. The other methods, you can never quite predict how you are going to go. So within this constitutional order, what you need are individuals. Unfortunately, when I look at the Kenyan political divide, on both sides of the political divide, there are people who have always been there for donkey years. There is nothing that they are going to deliver. It is the same thing. Their source of disgust is that we are no longer at the eating table. We are at the bottom of it. We are eating crumbs. We want to eat caviar and toast. Kenyans must wake up. The young people that we now call the Gen Z must now rise up and take the vote, and let us give it a last chance. Let us give it a last chance, because if young Kenyans were to rise and take the vote and simply say, anybody who has ever served as a parliamentarian or as an MCA or a governor, we are taking you home. Let us try a new crop of people. It can be done. And Kenya possibly will have a fighting chance. Easier said than done, but who said it is easy?
PLO, if you were to speak to Kenyans who are listening today in terms of getting the Kenya that we do want, Kenyans getting out there, registering as voters, getting out there to vote, and also deciding the kind of leaders that they do want, that they would not let the political class decide the kind of leaders who will end up at the ballot. Because if you have individuals who are both compromised, whether it is in opposition or in government, you pretty much have nothing to vote for. If you were to speak to Kenyans today in terms of deciding the future, what would you tell them?
I would tell Kenyans, look at the individuals who offer themselves, and if they have any connection with the past administrations, reject them. Give Kenyans who have never soiled their hands an opportunity to serve. If they come to you as independent candidates, elect them as independent candidates. We still have time. If such Kenyans organize them, they are people whose records you know. They have served as cabinet ministers. They have served as permanent secretaries. They have served as senators. They have served as governors. They have not delivered what this country desires. Use the ballot to send them home. Listen to new ideas. Have fresh faces who speak the truth, whatever the consequences.
I know we need to let you go, but just this one here, that there's a call, it could be clarion or otherwise, that people must come out to register to vote. But there are folks who feel disenfranchised from this whole process. And we talk about things like apathy and not really interested in the electoral process, because there is a certain level of distrust that has found its way into society, whether it's through the process or what then people do with power once they get it. And so they feel like they will back off from that and just kind of watch what will happen and not be involved. What would you say to that? And how important is it not just to register to vote, but see the process through by actually coming out and voting?
You know, when you don't take the vote, or when you don't turn up to vote, you are voting anyway, because you allow the few who vote to carry the day. It is your duty to come up and vote. And if you vote right and guard your vote, don't get tired. This country is just slightly over 60 years since we regained our independence. The life of a nation is not judged by 60 years. Keep on voting, keep on voting, keep on voting. And I believe that one day, sooner rather than later, we'll begin to get it right. So don't get tired. Don't get tired. Remember the Kiswahili saying, mtego wa panya uingia waliomo na wasiokuwemo. Kwa hivyo usipopiga kura, bado wale ambao watapiga kura watakuchagulia viongozi wahuni. Jinusuru na jinasue kutoka kwa ujinga wa kutopiga kura.
Well, there's a lot that we've looked into today, and then to have that conversation around what happens next. There is no what happens next tomorrow. It's a today thing where you're thinking in the moment and saying, well, this is where we are, this is what we have, and this is the direction in which we must go in. PLO Lumumba, thank you for being here with us this morning to look at the state of the nation and to make decisions about what must happen next. If you're not comfortable with it, then there's something that you can do. And thank you for sharing those insights with us this morning. We appreciate that, and that we should continue talking regardless. The door is going to open at some point.
Indeed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for accommodating me.
Thank you. PLO Lumumba is an advocate of the High Courts of Kenya and Tanganyika and has been with us this morning, and we look forward to the next one. Keep it alive. Asante sana. We come back and continue with all of this in a minute. And as we continue those conversations, keep it here in the Situation Room. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.